Hi, welcome to Awake TV. So today we're going to be talking about long-term short soul contract and the short-term soul contract. So we're going to give tips and experiences with client and something what they are, and let's get started. So when I'm going to give you guys definition, the short-term soul contract and the long-term short contract, it's different from Earth life and the galactic life. Let's say short-term soul contract on earth, which is like a short relationship. Like for example, you date with a guy and you see him like 3 months, and then that's short-term contract. And then long-term contract is, you meet your husband and happy ever after rest of your life. That's long-term contract on earth. But in galactic life, galactic life is not earth, short-term life. So short-term contract in galactic point of view is, you meet your husband and you live one lifetime, that's short-term contract. But long-term contract is, what we call, I don't like labeling it, but everybody know this term twin flame. So your first incarnation partner, your team buddy from your star life, that's a long-term contract. So let's get started. So Sue, share us about short-term and the long-term contract, soul contract from your experience and your client experience and stuff.
Okay. Well, my opinion of a short-term contract is really translates to an individual in spirit that agreed to meet with you at a point in your life where you're going to experience something, a relationship or an event, or, it could be school, it could be work, it could be pretty much anything, but you've agreed before the lifetime to meet up at a designated point in both your lives, and you're experiencing something together, or you're having a relationship together to teach one another something or to bring about something in one another. So, for example, if an individual wants to learn compassion, they may have somebody in their life that at some point in time becomes very sick, and that the first individual is maybe responsible for attending to that person's illness, and they have to all of a sudden do all this work involved with taking care of a sick individual, and over time that can become very draining. And so the compassion, the lesson of compassion comes in, because instead of being angry at this person for being sick or for the additional duties that you have to have in taking care of a sick person, maybe their finances and their accommodations, as well as, spending time with them and that sort of thing. It builds compassion, and it builds it for yourself as well when you're attending to a sick person, because you have to be compassionate of your own self as well as the sick individual that you're attending to. So that's a short-term contract, because, well, I mean, it could be a long-term. I mean, an individual who has a child, for example, with special needs, that could be
for the viewer. So the short-term contract in this example could be, this person got so tired and decided to hire home care nurse, and you happen to be this nurse. So you decided to take care of this person for 6 months. That's also short-term contract. By showing compassion by doing your profession as a nurse. So that's something I can.
And also,
now, what about long-term contract?
Long-term contract, I believe, is when two souls decide that they're going to meet at a certain point in life, and it may not be in the beginning of life, it could be anywhere in the life, but generally it is once they meet, they stay together throughout the life, not necessarily always until they both die, but generally speaking, a long-term contract, it is meant there's enough lessons that they're going to learn together by um, balancing each other out, and whatever they've decided to experience, that it's going to take a protracted amount of time to go ahead and work on those lessons together, so that it's more of a lifetime thing.
So usually long-term contract involved with more complicated lesson that which is a lot more challenge. So let's say family members, you're not gonna really get out of family relationship. It's very hard to get out. So you are there for life because they are your blood family. You can divorce your husband, another no family. You can divorce husband, but you cannot divorce your family, no matter how they are. You gotta stay with them for life, no matter how incompatible your family member is, right? So that's a long-term contract that you and whichever the family member decided to make, because whatever the lesson or lessons you guys trying to learn is not simple. It's like could be forgiveness. That's not the easy things to do. It takes whole life or 2 lives or 3 lives to go through. Depends on the situation.
The only thing I would disagree with you about is that sometimes it's advisable in learning self-love, even if it is a family member, to separate from somebody that is not being kind to you, that is constantly making you feel like garbage about yourself. I mean, just from personal experience, I've had to do that, and it's not fun, it's not wonderful, but it was a long-term contract. I mean, I was with this person, 49 years of my life. Got to a point where I had to say, I love myself enough to not want to be around this person anymore. And as painful as that is, I learned the lesson. I got it. But so that's the only way I would disagree with you on family members. Just because they're blood doesn't mean we got to stay with them.
Well, stay with them doesn't mean we have to meet them and be with them. We can have a comfortable distance. Like, for example,
yeah, there's all kinds of, you don't have to just cut somebody out of your life. I mean,
yeah,
like I did
that like once a year or something, like you still have some kind of contact, like every few years you send an email, like a Christmas card or whatever. So you can completely cut family member off. That's what I'm talking about. Depends on the situation.
Oh, I disagree. I cut this family member out for my own protection, but that's after 49 years. So that's why I'm saying you and I just have a little bit of a disagreement about that. But, there's different levels. Like you said, Erica, really important to mention. I mean, if you have a family member that is not someone you want to spend a lot of time with. I mean, there's so many different degrees of setting your boundaries and how much time you're willing to spend. So I think that's really valid. Just because I decided for myself that I didn't want this family, I tried for 49 years. It just wasn't going anywhere. So I finally, cut ties. And I think that's okay. That's what you have to do.
That might be a part of your lesson, to cut tie completely.
Right. See, that could have been part of the contract, but it was long term. So I want to emphasize that it wasn't like a teacher that came into my life and changed my opinion of myself. I did have that. I had a music teacher that was really tantamount to me feeling comfortable with music. My first music teacher scared the crap out of me, and I didn't learn how to read music. I only played music by ear. The second one that came in, and I had him for 2 years. He was a short-term contract. He was the one that helped me to understand that I had talent and that I could read music and that I didn't have to worry about making mistakes. So the difference between this individual that I'm talking about in my life that I cut ties with, that's a long-term contract. That's somebody, and I don't think it's a horrible thing when you get to a point with anybody, whether it's family or not, where you say, we really tried. We did Dolores Cannon talked about this in the quantum healing hypnosis technique. We really tried. And, I love you, you love me. I wish you the best. And then it's sort of a cord cutting, you know, sort of a release of contract. So I was wondering if you could talk about how you know when the contract's over, Erica.
Yeah, this is a really important subject to talk about. Let's start out from short-term contract. So when we have a short-term contract, like, it could be like a relationship doesn't last too long, or you thought this is the guy and you dated few months and it turned out to be he's not the one, or could be like, you guys met this friend and then you kind of got along for first few years, then something happened and you don't talk to each other, you know, ever again. Like a lot of things happens. But when short-term contract, you still have a feelings toward this person, or could be attachment or whatever it is. So it's very important to recognize what this is. So let's clarify when, especially when you're having short-term contract, because it's a short term, how do we recognize it, the signs, and how we let go. So we're gonna move on to other steps that whom we are supposed to meet, in next relationship or whatever, like next lesson. So a lot of times when we are meeting this, what you're gonna call it, ending point with this person, a lot of people don't want to let that person go or feel like, okay, there's something I can do about this. But when you look around and see ending is inevitable, and then when you try to hold on to it or fixing it and making stuff happen, things get worse and worse and worse. That's a sign. Can you add something, Sue, about this?
Oh, sure. I think within relationships, there's a feeling, as we talked about in the past, in your body and in your mind, your thoughts and your emotions. So body, mind, emotion, right? And if there's something consistently going on with those three things, it's your higher self telling you it's done. And fighting that conclusion of the relationship only brings, like you said, more pain or more difficulty. And so it's really being honest with yourself. And there are many, many people that do not want a relationship to end. And I keep going back to this topic, but it's really important because of the children. And I would say the children know that it's not right. They feel it, okay? Because they're getting that body, mind, emotion thing too. They're watching mom and dad. They're seeing everything that's going on. You're not fooling them by pretending. So, really important, I think, don't you, Erica?
Yeah, that's important. Like, especially, this, you want to hold on to this relationship comes from childhood trauma, or could be childhood, how you are treated by your parents, and you may have a trauma bond, or you may have all these kind of energetic issues from your past lives. So, this is why Sue and I do past life regressions to help out our clients, because it's not just about childhood trauma. But
Sure.
when you're holding on to this energetic stuff, psychological stuff so tightly, unconsciously, you don't even know why you're really holding on to. And once you clear all this out, by getting help from us, then you have finally having some sort of clarity that what you can actually do step by step to move forward your life.
I'm really glad you mentioned the past life connection, because I think a lot of people aren't able to link into that so easily. I know I wasn't until I was actually regressed. And I can just share very quickly personally, my father and I, we had a long-term contract, and we had to experience the opposite side of what we were doing for one another. So, for example, as a child, I had a lot of trauma, especially around my mother, and my father was always the one to protect me, to guide me, to give me the important roadmap for moving forward, for growing and becoming an adult. And so that my father played that role for me. And at the end of his life, the last 5 years, I was his caretaker. And as he became, as he had dementia, started having dementia from the vascular issues, I had to deal with my father more as a child or a teen, you know, an adolescent, rather than this brilliant man that I had grown up with all my life. So there's a resolution, there's the balance of our karmic relationship and our life our life contract, because it was in force until he died. And so that wasn't ending until death, okay? But when you're in a relationship like my other family member, I had the one that I don't see anymore, many years of trying an effort on my part to please this person, to be the person that she thought I should be, all these other things. I finally got to a level of such pain where I had to say, you know what? I care enough about myself to just start being me and accepting me for who I am. Yes, I do hypnosis. Yes, I believe in multiple lives. Yes, all these things. This person thinks it's all a bunch of malarkey and would criticize me and hurt me by being disloyal, talking behind my back to other family members, and, you know, just generally making me feel like poo about myself. And I finally said, you know what, that's it. So that was a long-term contract that ended naturally because I paid attention to how I felt. And I wonder if you have something similar to that.
It's very important to pay attention to how you feel, because it seems like that lesson for you is one, standing up for yourself, and then plus what you're going to call it, respecting yourself and your need, and giving yourself self-love. Because part of self-love could be tough love, that if your family member or your friend is not honoring who you really are, what are you going to do? Are you going to pretend who you're not, keep on making them happy, or you be who you are? So sometimes you do have to cut your tie from this person, right? I did the same thing with my close friend, and then, you know, we are friends now again, and because that's, you know, how it is. But because she has changed and stuff like that. But like, you do have to respect how you feel, and sometimes no matter how close the person is, you have to honor yourself over how you want to make other people happy. You know, that's very important. That's like a part of our development as a person, a soul, and a degree of self-love.
Do you think that all of the boyfriends that we ever had before we came to the relationship we are now, do you think that those were all short-term contracts, and and the only purpose for them was to help us delineate what we want and how we want to be treated?
It depends on like the lesson, you know, like each of us do have a different lessons, or by going through the relationship, we realize who we are more or what we don't want. So let's say if we, you know, I had a couple person who are not, I don't even call them a boyfriend. That's a date, you know.
Yeah, we had a couple of outings together and that was it,
You know,
right?
these people, you just meet each other and see how it goes. And then you do learn the lesson, right? You do learn how to listen to your instinct. You do learn how to listen to, okay, he looks good on paper, but I think he's for real, this kind of person, like, you know, not someone you want to be with. And you try to start to listen to your instinct and the gut feelings more than, you know, listening to what other people say. Oh yeah, he seems really nice, like he has, you know, this job and he looks good and blah blah. You know, that's part of the lesson too, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. I told my sons, I said, you know, every person you date, whether your heart's broken or not, at the end of it, when it ends, just look at it as a blessing, because you have the ability now to say, these are the things I definitely want and will put up with in a relationship. I don't say put up with, but I mean, this is what I want in a relationship, and this is definitely what I don't want. And so you thank that person for giving you the example and the lesson. You know, and you don't have to, it also teaches us how to say goodbye, right?
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
for
it's
sure.
not easy.
And then we don't have to hold on to it. And then even for the boyfriend who only been with like few years, right? Um, those people are short-term contract people. Of course, you
Yes.
need like a more significant lesson for each other than date. You know, that's
Right.
why you are together for a few years. So it is meaningful. And then you gave gift to each other. Let's say me and my catalyst. He came into my life, so he can show who he is, and he's showing what how being authentic is, because I wasn't really sure what that is. I wasn't spiritual. I wasn't really sure what being free, is all about. Like listening to your heart. I was listening to my mind. I was listening to my thought. I was listening to how everything is should be or what other people say, and he was completely opposite from that. And
Yeah.
then he broke all of my old paradigm, just being himself, because I loved him so much. And then I wanted to be like him. So I became like him while I was going out with him. And that was a few years. And then that was a short-term contract for, contract was, I think he's preparing me to, get ready for my own twin flame relationship, because he has to do that role and nobody else could do that role because he was that free,
Hmm.
that authentic.
You know, I think even a short-term contract could be bumping into somebody in a grocery store and having a conversation like this person you've never known, and something they say has just rocked your freaking world, like it opened you up somehow. So I mean, it doesn't have to be, you know, years, and you know, it could be one incident.
Oh,
uh yeah. And so I think there's an important thing to talk about, which is trust and knowing, like we said earlier, when something feels right, and it just, you know, you all of a sudden maybe have an urge to go talk to somebody that you don't even know, or that like you're just drawn to, like, you know, all of a sudden you're just drawn together. First 1 minute you're on this end of the room, next minute you're next to this person and you're talking to one another. That was meant to happen, and you have to trust that. And that was something you could look at and say, what was this about? If you don't know right away, it's something to consider. And then as you
what
said earlier,
about ending a long-term contract? How are we gonna let that go? And a lot of times, long-term contract is more of ending this contract by death. Like for example, my own example with my parent. Like my dad died when I was 11, and that was end of the contract. And then he was teaching me. He was very comfortable with being himself, very confident, and he he's a natural leader. So he always told me to be who I am. But at the age of 11, you don't even know what that is. So you couldn't really fully observe what he was saying. But the point is, when sometimes long-term contract ends, when a lot of times the other person die. It could be divorce, like let's say if you've been together for 10, 20, 30 years, then the time comes and you feel like you're no longer um, you're kind of outgrown, so you feel like you want to move on to other relationship, because you are more spiritual, let's say. That's just example. And then your husband isn't. Sometimes that happen. I hear that from my girlfriends as well. And then that's an end of long-term contract as well, when you are together with the person, like not few years but years. What about, and then when that comes, it's like a extremely painful, and you have to go through grieving period. But like have to accept this ending. What about you, Sue? What's your tips about how to end a long-term contract?
um, well, first of all, I think that how we look at a situation is going to dictate how we experience the situation. So, for example, and I know this is not like mainstream, but my husband and I have a long-term contract. I think we're supposed to be together in this life, but we also have an agreement that if it comes to a point where it's not working for one or the other, we're going to say it to each other, and we're going to say, I love you, but I need to move on. And so, yeah, there's going to probably be some pain involved in that, but there has to be maybe a respect for that other person. So, this is the way we have decided. So, every day that we stay together, that's a choice, not just because we have rings on our fingers. Okay. So, perception. If you can have a conversation with that individual without defenses, without trying to decide who's wrong. There's never anybody that's wrong unless there's abuse or neglect or something of that nature. But, it takes two to tango is what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
it takes two to have a healthy relationship. And if one or the other is not working, that's okay, but we're still not going to call it blame. We're going to say, this is a natural time for the relationship to come to its conclusion. And then you got to do a lot of self-care. Okay.
Yeah.
No longer, and I don't think anybody should be responsible for anybody else's mental health anyway. We are responsible for that. So if you've been taking care of that person, there's your lesson, okay? Your long-term contract lesson, which is you're coming to a point where you're understanding that that's not your role anymore. You let that person go with love, and now you bring it into yourself and you take care of yourself.
Yeah, you can be other person's Jesus, okay? That is my lesson as well. I have learned recently. Um, you you are there to serve you. Sounds selfish because our parents say, "Oh, think about other people," but the bottom line is you have to take care of yourself. You have to love yourself. You have to be like a good top-notch condition physically, psychologically, emotionally, and then live your life fully. That's your responsibility. And then when you try to take care of your partner and mothering them, or you are emasculating your partner. Okay, they know how to take care of themselves eventually, even though it doesn't seem like they're doing a good job, or you know you gotta trust your partner.
Well, and that's their lesson, isn't it? If they've been relying on you to take care of them and it's time for you to go, then they're going to have to learn how to take care of themselves. If you're talking about a male or a female that's become overly dependent on having a partner and doesn't know how to give what they need to themselves emotionally, physically, financially, all of that, there's their lesson.
Yeah,
You still have to move on.
everybody,
Let
it's
them
very
do it.
important to be independent and then interdependent instead of codependent. So when you feel like, okay, I have to take care of this person, only person you need to take care of is, besides yourself, kids need to be taken care of until certain age, because you cannot just tell your kids, like a little kids, like you gotta be independent. No.
Right. Well, that's a contract you sign up for to take care of them until they're able to do it themselves. But
Yeah.
also think about the lesson in that is your children watching you make those decisions that are empowering, self-empowering. That's a lesson you're giving them, a gift.
Yes. And then
Rather than staying in a relationship that isn't working, that's not a very nice thing for them to see and experience spiritually, physically, emotionally, or mentally. It's so much better for them to see you move on. But yeah, of course, you have to take care of the kids until they can do it themselves, but you're showing them the best example possible by moving on and doing what's right for you.
And then
That's not
once you
selfish.
tell them teach them how to take care of themselves, you have to watch them how they do it without putting all control, like, this is not how you do it, do this. Let them learn, let them make mistakes, and then let them, honor how they think, like cultivate their way of thinking. So once they know how to think, they can solve their problems instead of us telling them how to solve their problems in our own way.
Right. They have to follow their own soul contract. So no matter what we think is right for them, we have to encourage them to follow their inner calling and their inner guidance. And so that's really valuable to mention. You know, this is a topic that's so big, we could go on and on about it.
Yeah.
But I would just suggest for myself, my favorite author on this topic is Robert Schwartz. He did Your Soul's Gift and Your Soul's Plan, as well as a couple of other books that I found extremely valuable in garnering insight as to why, especially some really tedious kind of situations like incest, like what would be the soul contract there? I mean, there's a big taboo subject, right? Or for me was helpful the caregiving chapter in Your Soul's Gift, because as I told you, I was a caregiver. So that really gave me some great insights. Do you have anybody that you felt was a pioneer in the understanding soul contracts?
No, really, because my guide told me to talk to them. So first 7 years, I only talked with my archangels and Jesus. So I wasn't really learning from books and learning from other people because they told me they do have their own filters. So first, talk with them, and then when I'm ready, I can start, looking at the stuff or reading books. So I wasn't really going to spirituality stuff through books and the stuff, because they told me to cultivate myself through conversation. I was, lucky that I'm a clear audience, so I can speak with my guide just like I'm speaking with Sue, right here, right now. So, but yeah, so I don't have anybody particular, but what I can tell you guys is always, always, always listen to your heart, because your heart is connected to your multidimensional selves as who you are, to your divine self, to your spiritual team, to your higher self. So your heart, your soul desire never steer you to wrong direction. Always, always pay attention to your heart, your soul, and then listen.
Yep, I agree completely.
Yeah. So we're gonna see you guys next week, and we're gonna bring a lot more different, interesting topic, and see you guys next Friday. Thank you so much for watching, listening. Please share, like, subscribe. Thank you so much, Sue.
Thank you, Erica.
Bye, guys.
Bye.